victim. When it comes to, so my thinking is, well, okay, if you can do that in assault cases,
right,
you must be able to do it with police officers.
Sure.
So why can't you call 5 people been beaten up by a police officer illegally to prove that it's more likely that that officer did it in this kind of situation or was the aggressor? But so far it's been a crashing failure to do that. It seems like there's a double standard on the part of the courts when it comes to police officers. But I'm going to keep advancing that, and eventually, hopefully, that's going to get to the Court of Appeal or the Supreme Court of Canada to make it very clear that you can do it for police officers too. So, in some of the cases, I've been allowed to cross-examine an officer on other acts of violence, even show pictures.
Right.
Like dog cases are bad, right?
By dog case, you're referring to the fact that they've used like a canine unit or something, like a police dog, to attack somebody.
Yeah, and I've had cases where I've got the dog handler and I'll pull out photographs of injuries in another case.
Right.
So this is what your dog did.
Right.
Right? And then you can cross-examine the officer about the circumstances of that biting.
Right.
Some judges will allow it, some judges won't.
Where did you get it in the first place? Where did you get the other? Would that come through basic disclosure, or would that come through something else?
Oh, that comes from the database.
Right.
The police database and cases we've just collected. You know, a lot of the stuff in the database is information from our own cases. But what the courts have not allowed me to do is to call the victims of those bites.
Right. Okay. All right. That makes sense to me. Now, the one last section I don't think that we've covered yet from your initial talk there. You talk about plea bargaining, and you talk about distinctions for AMP or peace bonds or common law bonds, 810 bonds. Could you tell me what your thoughts are on that?
Okay. So most clients who come in who've been beaten up by the police, the primary objective is to get free of the criminal charges.
Right. Yeah.
But they have a very strong secondary objective. They want something done about what that cop did. Not only because they're very upset about it happening to them.
Right.
Many of them say, this officer shouldn't be loose with a gun.
Right.
He's going to hurt somebody else.
Right.
So they want accountability. They also want to be compensated for the damage caused, and they might suffer grievous injuries, lifelong injuries.
Or getting beaten up.
Well, yeah, or shot or something, anything, right?
Right. Sure.
So, if you're negotiating with the Crown, or the Crown comes to you with a deal, you have to be ultra careful not to do anything that might prejudice your client's case against the officers. So what I say to clients is, okay, defense first, offense later. And so if your client, for example, if you're challenging whether the officer had the lawful authority to detain the officer in the first place, well, you better not be pleading guilty to the offense that the officer said that he was detaining him.
Right. Right. And you actually give diversion and peace bonds, I think, especially diversion, these are generally considered relatively good deals, right? The person doesn't get it. So, but you can see liabilities to that, is what you're saying.
Yeah, there are risks, right? Well, the common law peace bond, there's a case out of the provincial court, Judge Rossborough decided, about peace bonds, and you don't have to admit anything.
Right.
It's completely without prejudice.
Right.
An 810 peace bond, you have to admit something that could be prejudicial. And diversion, well, you're going to have to admit responsibility for something.
Right.
For AMP, right?
Right.
So you have to be really careful. But, I mean, there's some cases where the initial, you know, for example, take your impaired driving case, for example.
Sure. I take them.
Yeah. I know you do. You get pulled over because you're weaving all over the road.
Sure.
And the cop stops you. Well, that detention's good.
Right.
Right? Or you're stopped and then you take off.
Right.
Okay, well, that's flight,
Right.
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 Then you get stopped again.
Right.
Then you get the crap kicked out of you.
Right.
Okay, so you could plead to the flight
Right.
and not be at any risk, because
Right.
that's not your point. You're
Right.
just saying, well, that didn't justify getting the crap kicked out of you.
Right.
So just be careful, whatever facts you're admitting to. If it's something that you think you might need to prove later,
Right.
to found a complaint or to sue, don't admit it. And you know, unfortunately, some Crown prosecutors misperceive their own role. They don't act for anybody except for Her Majesty the Queen.
Right.
And
A quasi-judicial function.
well, they're Minister of Justice.
Right. Yeah.
Not to seek a conviction
Yeah.
just for the sake of
Never
getting
wins
it.
or loses.
Never wins or
That's
loses,
the
all that
concept.
kind of stuff.
And,
right?
and many, my own
But
experience. have been-
I tell you, I get lots of Crowns say, if I say you should drop this
Right.
because this is brutal,
Right.
what happened. Lots of Crowns say, well, I don't think the police would accept that.
Right.
And I know Crowns who have dropped things,
Yeah.
and they've received complaints from the officers
Right.
to their boss about
Right.
them doing it. So if you hear a Crown say that,
Right.
I think it's effective, and to say, well, I understand what you're saying, that the police might be upset, but that's not your job, is it?
Right.
And a lot of Crowns will say, yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
it's not my
and that's
job.
been-
Not
that's
my
been-
job.
Exactly, and that's been my own experience. I mean,
Yeah.
generally, for the most part. I mean, I'm not
Yeah.
I'm not doing this particular thing as much in any event.
Yeah.
I think it's safe to say. I mean, you'd probably agree, or maybe you wouldn't. I mean, most prosecutors do sort of see themselves as above the fray in many
Yeah.
cases. Yeah.
They do, but I mean, you know, it's hey, they're human. It's human nature, right?
Oh,
You're
no,
like
oh, no, you bet.
if you're working hand in hand with
Yeah.
you're in a small community, and
Oh,
working
yeah,
hand
you
in
bet.
with these officers,
Right.
you even pull an impaired
Yeah, sure.
charge, and they know that the cop's gonna be down his neck.
Yeah.
Well, they're gonna be
Even a large center like Edmonton, you run
Oh,
the
yeah.
same people. Like you'll run the same
Yeah.
people again and again.
yeah, for sure.
Excellent. Tom, you are always a wealth of information, and again, when I have these issues come up, Tom is in fact the first guy I call. And thank you very much for taking time out of your busy day. You've spent a lot of billable hours or minutes in any event on this, and it's always a pleasure. Good to see you, and thank you for your time, sir. You have a good day.
You're welcome.